Now in the name of Assembly Member O'Connell, dangerous dogs, to be seconded by Assembly Member Cooper.
Thank you very much, Chair. I rise to move this motion, which I feel very strongly about, and I hope I can get the support of the entire Assembly. First of all, I state clearly that there can be no moral equivalence around the death of a child as a result of a dog attack and having to put a dog down. This is not about that kind of equivalence and balance. This is about a piece of legislation that has not worked, in essence. And it's not worked for these various reasons. It was aimed to be brought in to reduce the number of injuries after some very highly publicised attacks on children 25 years ago. That is not the case. There's been a 76% increase in hospitalisations of people from dog attacks over that period. It has patently not worked. Clearly, the part of the Act that we are unhappy about is the Section 1, which is the breed-specific legislation, which in essence targets 4 particular breeds. Those breeds, therefore, are then deemed to be dangerous in and of themselves. And I brought this, and you bear with me on this one, I started thinking about this when I visited Baddesley Dogs and Cats Home for the first time, around about 3 or 4 years ago, when I was taken into a holding pen to see a bitch dog there, who was one of these breeds, or purported to be one of these breeds. I spoke to the dog psychiatrist that day. They do have dog psychiatrists there, and he said this bitch dog is probably the nicest dog you're going to see. That dog was being put down that day, and that made me start thinking about this. So ultimately what we want the Mayor to do is to write to the Secretary of State and to ask that this takes it to a formal review and potentially a parliamentary inquiry, which will likely to lead to the repeal of this Act. We all know, and those who are dog owners have taken interest, that dog attacks are not just these breeds. Any dog can cause damage to a youth and to a child and to a baby if they're not brought up properly and mistreated. And that is where this Act doesn't serve Londoners. We need to look at this again. We need to look at repealing the Act, but also bringing in other measures about education, about how you bring dogs up and how you can identify dangerous dogs of all breeds. So what we want here is to get the support of the Assembly. We want the Mayor to write to the Secretary of State, as I've said. We can take this forward, which will make Londoners safe around dog attacks, but also solve some animal welfare issues which I pointed around earlier. So I seek your support.
Assembly Member Cooper to second.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and I'm particularly pleased to second this motion so that it's coming forward on a cross-party basis, because the issue of dog bites and children particularly being mauled by dogs and as a result dying is obviously a very serious one. But the legislation was, I think it would be fair to say, rushed through. Now that was 25 years ago, so it's probably slightly overdue now for being looked at. And I think, Assembly Member O'Connell, I'm delighted to hear that you've left the fastnesses of Croydon and Sutton and come all the way up to Merton and Wandsworth, and obviously the Battersea Dogs and Cats Home gives me a lot of support, and I try and support them as well as a local institution. And they've done a very good report this year, which is called Dog Bites, What's Breed Got to Do with It? And essentially nothing at all. It is very much about the socialisation of the dogs. And so, you can say, well, we're going to ban pit bull terriers, and then all that happens is that people who want to socialise their dogs to fight and bite will go out and train other dogs. And, one of the dogs that has been used in that way, and I think it's extremely reprehensible, is the Staffordshire Bull Terrier. But if you don't train it in that way, it's also an absolutely lovely family pet, in the way that Assembly Member O'Connell said. You find dogs that are very, very nice of all different breeds. So I think it's long overdue for re-looking at this particular piece of legislation, not just because we might be pointlessly putting down the wrong dogs, and in some cases actually just it's on look. And you might have 4 dogs in a litter that don't look as if they're a pit bull terrier, and then 4 that look as though they might conform. And it's completely wrong to try and just do it on the look of the dogs. We need to be taking proper action to make sure that we're safe from dogs, also that dogs are safe from us, and that they're not being trained to fight each other. And I very much hope that everyone will support taking forward some action to improve this piece of legislation. And so I'm supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Assembly Member Russell.
I'd like to speak briefly in favour of the motion. In the 25 years since the Dangerous Dogs Act was passed, there has been absolutely no reduction in dog bites. And this is because focusing on the breed of the dog is not an appropriate way to assess how a dog is going to behave. I gather there's no evidence that these banned breeds are more aggressive than any other breeds, and sadly, many thousands of dogs have been put down, leaving their owners devastated. So we need a different approach. We need it to be based on education, particularly targeted at children. We need to have a focus on the real issue, which is irresponsible dog ownership, and we need to base our policy on a better understanding of why dogs bite. So I support the motion for a formal review of breed-specific legislation.
Thank you very much. Anyone opposing this? Thank you. No need for a summation. Those in favour of the motion, please show. Motion is carried. Thank you very much. The next matter down